Want to know the difference between an essay that will get you overlooked and one that will get you into your dream school? Today I'm analyzing an essay about directing a play during COVID, and I'll transform it right in front of you using the exact framework I teach my students. You'll see in real time how 3 simple shifts can completely change the impact of your writing. By the end of this video, you'll understand why some essays get remembered while others get forgotten, and how to make sure that yours stands out for the right reasons. If you're working on your application essay, stick around because I'm sharing my essay transformation guide in the description below. It's completely free and will walk you through the 5 questions that will instantly elevate your writing. When I was in high school, I thought I knew how to write. I'd gotten A's on every paper, my teachers praised my writing. So when it came time for college essays, I thought I'd ace them like everything else. But my first draft was terrible. It checked all of the boxes: good grammar, a proper structure, a nice story about overcoming a challenge. But when I showed it to my English teacher, she just sighed and said, "Elise, this isn't you, this could be anyone." To say the least, I was devastated. Like many of you, I thought good writing meant following rules and sounding impressive. But what I learned and what changed everything for me is that college essays aren't about impressing anyone. They're about revealing who you truly are. When I finally threw out that first draft and wrote from a place of truth, everything changed. Not only did I get into Harvard, but whenever I started mentoring other students, I realized that these are the exact same mistakes that nearly every student makes. Here's the truth about college essays that most students don't understand. Admission officers don't want to be impressed, they want to be moved. This completely flips conventional writing advice on its head. In school, you're taught that good writing is clear, organized, and straightforward. You're rewarded for sounding academic and following formulas. But college essays operate on entirely different rules. The students that get into top schools often break traditional writing conventions. They're more personal, more creative, and more revealing than anything you'd write for your English class. Think about it from an admissions officer's perspective. They read thousands of essays that follow the same predictable patterns. Another sports victory, another community service trip, another lesson learned from a grandparent. The essays that stand out aren't necessarily extraordinary experiences, they're ordinary experiences told in extraordinary ways. They reveal how a student thinks, what they value, and how they see the world. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to analyze a typical college essay about a student directing a play during COVID, and I'll transform it using 3 simple techniques that will instantly elevate the writing. You'll see exactly what makes the difference between an essay that gets passed over versus one that gets remembered. Let's take a look at our sample essay. It tells the story of a high school theater director whose play was canceled due to COVID and how they adapted it to a virtual format. It's a perfectly fine essay, clear, well-structured, and with a clear beginning, middle, and end. But it has the same problem that I see in 90% of essays I review. It tells us what happened, but not why it matters. Let me show you the 3 transformations that will completely change the impact of this essay. Transformation number 1, create an immersive opening. Let's compare the openings. Here's the original. March 13th, 2020. In one moment, my life would change forever. I was directing the spring play, Arsenic and Old Lace, and after months of hard work, our opening night was just 1 day away. The opening follows what I call a calendar approach. It starts with the date and tells us something important happened. This isn't necessarily a bad way to start your essay because it is informative, but because of the way that the author wrote it, it's emotionally flat. Here's the transformed version. In order to reduce the spread of COVID-19, effective immediately, school will be closed until further notice. At that moment, I felt dozens of eyes on me, waiting for instructions from their director. The difference is immediate. The second version doesn't just tell us what happened, it shows us. We're dropped directly in the moment, hearing the announcement through the students' ears and feeling the weight of eyes on them. This is the key to a memorable essay. Don't just report events, recreate them. Give the reader a sensory experience. Look at the specific techniques that transform the opening. First, it starts with dialogue, immediately making the scene more dynamic. Second, it focuses on a specific moment rather than trying to summarize a day. Third, it creates tension that pulls the reader forward. Fourth, it shows the student in relation to others. as a leader being looked to for guidance. When admission officers read this opening, they're not just learning information, they're having an experience. That's what makes them want to keep reading. Transformation 2, develop a central metaphor. I want to preface by saying that not every college essay needs a metaphor, but if you decide to use one, you need to use it in the right way. The original essay starts off with a brief flower metaphor. My life was like a flower that suddenly stops growing right before it's about to bloom. The metaphor appears once and then disappears. It's generic. It could apply to anyone facing a challenge, and it doesn't actually connect to the specific moment of directing a play. In the transformed essay, we use a richer, more specific metaphor, a collage. Staring at the collage, I'd lovingly pasted into my director's notebook black and white stills from old comedies, swaths of fabric, and macabre quotes from the play. I felt only sadness, knowing that in a few seconds I'd send the cast and crew home for the last time, our collective work reduced to a similarly jumbled, peeling collage of memories. This metaphor does multiple things the flower metaphor doesn't. It's specific to the student's experience as a director, it's visual and concrete, and it evolves throughout the essay, gaining new layers of meaning. Later in the transformed essay, the metaphor returns and expands. Our entire production had been collaged together by resourcefulness, using the tools available to make something fresh and fun. And by the end, it becomes a way of viewing the experience and the student's approach to life. Our play was scrappy, rough around the edges like torn pages of magazines, but put together, it was a monument to our tenacity, one that could be played and replayed, a boundless living collage. A powerful central metaphor gives admission officers something to remember about your essay. Years later, they might not recall your name, but they will remember the collage essay. Transformation number 3, shift from what happens to what it means. This is the most important transformation. The original essay spends most of the time describing the series of events, how they adapted to play, the technical challenge they faced, etc. Let's compare how each essay concludes, starting with the original. This experience was challenging, but it also taught me resilience and to think outside of the box. I now know that setbacks can be opportunities for creativity and growth. In the future, I'm excited to keep directing plays and adapting to new challenges, knowing that my flower can grow in any soil. This conclusion tells us what the student learns, but in vague general terms that could apply to any challenge. It relies on telling rather than showing and returns to the flower metaphor that wasn't developed at all throughout the essay. Now here's the transformed version. Today, I look back at the memory of directing Arsenic not with sadness, but with newfound awareness of the creativity that comes from constraint, the vibrancy of collaboration. Looking ahead to the future, I'm excited to work with casts, friends, and classmates to create a new living collage of experiences. From directing new works of theater to sourcing dorm furniture from garage sales, I'll bring the same resourcefulness, grit, and imagination to each new challenge. This conclusion doesn't just tell us what the student learned, it shows us how they think. It reveals a mind that finds meaning in challenges, that values collaboration, and sees beauty in constraint. It also extends beyond just the experiences of theater and shows how the student will take these lessons and carry them forward to college and beyond. Let's examine another paragraph comparison to see the shift in action, starting with the original. We worked for weeks to adapt the blocking and come up with new design choices for the Zoom version. We decided to make the play look as much as possible like an old TV show, and my lightning designer figured out how to put black and white filters over the actors' screens. This paragraph focuses on what they did, the technical aspects of the play. Now let's look at the transformed version. Because we were all in uncharted territory, none of us had made digital theater before, I knew my direction would need to be more collaborative than ever. Instead of writing down the blocking the night before, I encouraged the actors to explore the spaces in their homes, working with them to create blocking that accounted for the size and layout of their rooms. The revised paragraph not only shows us the technical aspects, but it shows us how the student thinks as a leader. Their approach to problem solving, their collaborative mindset, their adaptability. It shows us the what, which is the collaborative direction, but it also emphasizes the why, which is because they were in uncharted territory, and it also shows us the how, by encouraging exploration. This is exactly what admission officers are looking for, not just what you did, but who you are and how you think. Now let's analyze another key section from both essays. Here's the original. After weeks of Zoom rehearsals and production meetings, the play was finally ready to open. Sitting in front of my computer screen that night with my family around me, I felt nervous but exhilarated. Watching this show was surreal. There were plenty of mistakes, like when one of the leads leaned in to kiss the other actor on the wrong side of her screen, but since we'd restarted rehearsals on such short notice, I was amazed that so much went off without a hitch. This describes the performance but keeps us at a distance emotionally. It tells us the student felt nervous but exhilarated, but keeps us from actually experiencing those emotions with the student. Here's the transformed version. 6 weeks and dozens of Zoom hours later, our one night only performance streamed to the world. Creatively, it was a hodgepodge. Actors performed blocking developed for different rooms in the same screen, stage directions were read by a narrating voice, and certain scenes were enacted in the style of an old-timey radio play because they were too difficult to convey visually. Once, 2 actors playing lovers leaned in for a kiss on opposite sides of their screens. Still, looking at my laptop, I felt triumphant. Our play was scrappy, rough around the edges, like torn pages of magazines, but together it was a monument to our tenacity, one that could be played and replayed. A boundless living collage. This version brings us into the moment while simultaneously reflecting on its meaning. It acknowledges the imperfections but reframes them as what made this experience memorable. And it connects back to the central metaphor, giving this entire essay a sense of unity and purpose. These 3 transformations together create an essay that doesn't just tell a story, it reveals a person. An essay that doesn't just inform, but it engages. An essay that admission officers don't just read, but they remember. Now you might be wondering, do these transformations actually work? Now let me share some real-life evidence that proves they do. I've worked with hundreds of students on their college essays, and I've seen firsthand how these 3 shifts completely make the difference between an essay that gets remembered and one that gets forgotten. Let's look at some specific patterns I've observed in successful essays. Pattern number 1, essays that start with immersive moments create immediate connection. Admission officers often make initial judgments about an essay during the first few sentences. Essays that begin with general statements or passive descriptions create immediate distance. Consider this example of a film school essay of a grandfather's influence on cinema appreciation. Here's a typical opening. My grandfather has always been an important influence in my life. He introduced me to classic films when I was young. Now let's compare it to this immersive alternative. The projector's light cut through the basement darkness as my grandfather's weathered hand placed a reel of film onto the spindle. This one, he whispered, changed everything. The second version immediately transports the reader into the scene. It creates a vivid sensory experience that pulls the reader in emotionally and makes them want to keep reading. Pattern number 2, essays with developed metaphors become memorable. Not all essays need a central metaphor in order to be successful, but essays with strong metaphors that are actually developed well throughout the essay are more likely to be remembered by admission officers, sometimes even being referenced specifically in acceptance letters. Imagine an essay about learning Persian calligraphy that develops a metaphor comparing the controlled flourishes of calligraphy to the differences between American and Iranian culture. Throughout the essay, specific aspects of calligraphy, such as the pressure of the pen, the balance of the ink, the pressure of the strokes, these all illuminate different aspects of identity development. This type of extended metaphor adds different layers of meaning and gives admission officers a specific visual way to remember the essay, and this makes it stand out after reading thousands of applications. Pattern number 3, essays that reveal thinking create stronger connections. When essays shift from describing events to revealing thought processes, they create deeper connections with the reader. Many admission officers have confirmed that they are mainly looking for evidence that reveals how a student thinks. For example, an essay about volunteering at a hospital could be a chronological account of duties and interacting with patients. But a more effective approach would emphasize the questions that arose during those interactions, the ethical dilemmas, and how the student thinking about healthcare evolved throughout the experience. This revised approach doesn't just show that someone volunteered. It reveals the mind of someone grappling with complex issues in healthcare, which is much more relevant to someone that is going on the pre-med track. I want to share a framework that I use with my students called the 4-burner strategy, which is perfectly relevant for writing college essays. Imagine your essay as a stove with 4 burners. The information burner, the facts, events, and details of your story. The reflection burner, so your thoughts, insights, and what the experience meant to you. The character burner, so aspects of your personality and values the story reveals. And finally, the contribution burner, how this experience relates to your future goals and contributions. In most essays I see, students have the information burner on high while the others are barely lit. They focus on telling what happened, but they neglect to show what it meant, what it revealed about them, and how it connects to their future. The essays that stand out the most often have all 4 burners working in harmony, with the reflection and character burner on the highest. They balance information with insight and detail with meaning. Let's see how this played out in our example essay. In the original, the information burner was high with detailed descriptions of what happened during the play. The reflection burner was turned on at the end with generic statements about resilience, while the character and connection burners were barely lit. In the transformed essay, all 4 burners were working together. The information burner provided selective, meaningful details. The reflection burner was active throughout, showing how the student tackles challenges. The character burner revealed leadership style, creative thinking, and collaborative mindset. And the connection burner linked these experiences to how the student will move forward in their future with these lessons and beyond. This balanced approach creates an essay that feels complete and multidimensional, exactly what admission officers want. Now that you've seen these transformations in action and evidence that they work, let's talk about how you can apply these to your actual essay. The good news is that you don't need to completely rewrite your essays from scratch. Most of the time, the raw material is already there, it just needs to be reshaped and refocused. Here's a simple process you can follow. First, identify your strongest opening moment. Look for the most emotionally charged or tension-filled moment in your experience. Move it to the beginning and make it immersive by using dialogue, sensory details, and specific images. Second, find your central metaphor. What object, image, or concept connects deeply with your experience? It should be something specific and meaningful to you, not just a generic symbol. Weave it throughout your essay, allowing it to evolve and gain new layers of meaning. Third, highlight the moments that reveal your thinking. For every action you describe, ask yourself, what does this reveal about how I think? What values or qualities does it demonstrate? Make those connections explicit. 4, apply the 4 burner strategy. Check if all 4 burners, so information, reflection, character, and connection, are present in your essay. Adjust the heat of each to create the right balance. To help you with this process, I've created a free essay transformation guide that walks you through the 5 essential questions you need to ask yourself before submitting any college application essay. These are the same questions I use with my students who have gone on to get into every top university across the nation. The guide includes step-by-step instructions for implementing these 3 transformations, examples of before and after paragraphs, common mistakes that make admission officers lose interest, and a checklist to evaluate your essay's impact. To download it, just click the link in my description below or visit my website. It's completely free, my gift to you to make your essay stand out. The most important thing to remember about college essays is that they're not about proving you're exceptional. They're about revealing who you are. In our example, we didn't change the basic story. The students still directed a play that got canceled due to COVID. They still adapted it to a virtual format and they still faced challenges and overcame them. What changed was how the story was told and what it revealed about the student in the process. The original essay showed a student who persevered through a challenge. The transformed essay reveals a creative thinker who finds meaning in constraints, who leads collaboratively, and who approaches life like a collage of experiences to be assembled with resourcefulness and imagination. Your story already has everything it needs to stand out. You just need to tell it in a way that reveals the most compelling version of yourself. Not the version that you think admission officers want to see, but the authentic you that only you can show. When you do that, your essay won't just help you get into college. It will clarify to you what matters most about your experiences and who you've become because of them. That's the real magic of a great college essay. It doesn't just convince others of your worth, it helps you discover it for yourself. And if you want access to resources to help you craft unique and compelling college essays, click the link in my description to get this free resource along with all of my other free resources to help you get into your dream university. I'll show you exactly how to craft your perfect essay that reflects your authentic interests and strengthens your application.